I now call to order the regular scheduled meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals. Notice to the public the time, the date, the place, and the agenda for this meeting was published as a legal notice on November the 2nd, 2020 in the Aiken Standard. Notice to contiguous property owners were mailed and signs were posted on or before November the 4th, 2020. Notice of the meetings was sent to the city clerk for posting on the municipal building notice board and to the city clerk for posting at least 24 hours before this meeting. Agenda sheets were mailed or emailed to interested parties. As a reminder, it is unlawful for any person giving testimony to this board knowingly provide false information that's according to section 22-9 of the Aiken Municipal Code. Each infraction is a separate offense with a penalty of up to 30 days in jail and or a fine of $1,092.50. Any person that wishes to address the board, we ask that you please occupy the cubicle in front of me, the podium. Please state your name and your address. Anyone that wishes to receive copies of today's proceedings may contact the planning department by telephone, or you may sign up on the sign-up sheets beyond the double doors. To the board, you have received copies of the meeting minutes of the August 25th, 2020 meeting. Are there any corrections or additions?
Hearing none, Mr. Chair, I move that they be approved as submitted.
I second.
It's been properly moved and second that the August 25th, 2020 meeting be approved as presented. Are there any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion show by a raise of the right hand. Those opposed, same sign. The motion is carried. Since we have no old business, I have written in that we should take a look at the meeting schedule for the Board of Zoning Appeals meetings during 2021 and 2022. Do we have any discussion?
Chairman, we did not. We typically include this with your first meeting in. So technically, your first meeting in January is a calendared meeting that was previously approved. So that's when you would typically go through the motion of actually approving this. I think we wanted to get some direction on the board from it this evening. We have another case where in December, you have, well, a couple things. You do have a meeting on the calendar for January 7th, 2021. That's a Thursday. That was the last approved meeting of the last calendar. So at that time, we'll be approving the official calendar for the next year, and we will also be electing officers. The kind of quirk, I guess, as we worked through this year's schedule is how you want to handle December meeting. We're proposing no December meeting. It would be the 28th, which falls between Christmas and New Year's, which is typically troublesome for scheduling purposes and that sort of thing, which would give us kind of staying on the same type of schedule, a January 6th meeting if a December application were to come in.
Otherwise, everything will be on the January 26th meeting.
That's right.
Thank you. comments from the board?
So the first January meeting would be the 6th or the 7th, if there is a December application.
We currently have a January 7th, 2021 meeting that was approved as part of the current meeting calendar we're on.
That's if we get a submission by December 3rd,
That's right.
which as of now, we do not have one, correct?
We do not, yeah, so one would have to come in early next week.
And then if we do, it'll be January 7th, correct?
That's correct.
Thursday.
That's correct.
Okay.
And then, essentially, if it wouldn't, we would stay on our typical meeting schedule and then be able to approve it and elect officers the first available meeting. We wouldn't, I guess we'd coordinate with the chair, but we wouldn't necessarily hold a meeting January 7th just for the sake of holding a meeting and doing that. I think we have the ability to move forward. But the next following year, the calendar gets bumped around a little bit, so that would be, instead of January 7th, January 6th, 2022, is that Thursday, that first available Thursday in January that we typically slide to if the December meeting is not workable.
Yeah. I guess we can rely on the planning department unless the submitted application is urgent. They would probably try to ask them if they could hold over till the January 26th meeting rather than schedule a meeting early January, like January 7th.
Right. It just becomes so, we typically would rather do that than notice something in a hurry during the holiday season, just for the fairness of public notice and things like that.
Thank you. The board will solicit a motion from the board on the schedule for 2021-22.
Mr. Chair,
But-
if I understand the schedule properly, then I'll move that we accept the dates as outlined here for 2021, starting off with January 7th and going through January 7th, 2021, and going through January 25th, 2022, as outlined, knowing that there's a chance we won't have a January 7th meeting if there are no submittals by next Thursday.
Second, man.
Been properly moved and second that we accept the board, the meeting outline as presented. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor of the motion show by raising the right hand. The motion is carried. Brandon, are you?
What's that now?
Did you vote?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. The motion is carried unanimously. After waking Brandon up.
Okay.
On to the next case.
That completes the items of old business. We'll move directly into new business. I call your attention to application 21-93001. That's a request for a variance to section 4.2.1 to permit a reduction in the side yard setbacks that's on property zone, single-family residence. That's at 921 Calhoun Place Southeast. To the city, has this been properly posted?
It has.
Any inquiries that you wish to share with the board?
We've received no inquiries on this case.
Thank you. Presentation?
You have received a request for variance to side yard setbacks with regard to sections 421 and 342 of the zoning ordinance. Subject property is at 921 Calhoun Place, which is about a half-acre parcel on the west side of Calhoun Place, approximately halfway between Knox and Bernard Avenues. It is currently developed with approximate 2,200 square foot single-family residence constructed in the mid-50s. and an approximate 250 square foot accessory building. Also, as far as we can tell, dating back probably to about the time the house was built. Subject property is zoned residential single family, RS15. The applicants were desiring to do, the entire block in the neighborhood is all zoned RS15, is fairly consistent in that direction. We have here a overhead photo of the property. The applicant, as we kind of turn it sideways here for the exhibit, north is to your right. The applicant's desiring to add on to what I would call the right rear or northwest corner of the house, of the main residence. And it essentially squares off two existing walls there. But due to a kind of minor pie shape of the lot, it's not too severe, but it's enough that it causes some problems in doing so, in that it results in a 7.5 foot corner from the adjacent property line. Pursuant to section 421 of the zoning ordinance, which is the table of residential design standards, the city zoning ordinance requires a 10-foot setback in that location currently. You'll notice on the plat that it references a 7.5 foot setback on the actual plat. I can't be certain where that come from. It could have just been from just the history of that plat and when setbacks had changed over time. Additionally, where the workshop is, I guess I'd call it, or the accessory building on the left or southwest of the house, the applicants wishes to construct a garage and are asking to do so within approximately 8 feet of that property line. The side yard setback for accessory buildings pursuant to section 342D of the zoning ordinance is also 10 feet. And with that said, staff would be glad to answer any questions you would have of staff.
Does the board have any questions to the city? Brandon?
Yes. So the 10-foot setback went into effect what year?
I know. It's been at least the early 2000s that it had, we adopted a new zoning ordinance in 99, 2000. I believe a lot of the adjustments were made around that time to that side yard setback.
And with the city's observation that there appear to be certainly a few, if not many, garages that are inside that setback, is there any anecdotal observation as to when the dates of these other detached garages? They appear to have been before or after the city's?
It appears that most of those detached garages, as I kind of
Done
traveled
back
through the
in time?
neighborhood and tried to do some minor research on the county assessor's website, which occasionally have some year-built data, I believe those to be done prior to the change in the zoning ordinance. They've been around for some time.
Okay.
Other questions from the board?
This, sir, my question may be better addressed to the applicant, but looking at the, what you have up there and highlighted in yellow, I understand, I think I'm looking over at the northwest corner, that's the bedroom addition. And the garage is where an existing block building is now, is that correct?
That's correct. So the garage is to the left and rear of the house, and the bedroom addition is on, I guess, what I would call the right rear of the existing residence. If I point to them here, this is the addition to the home, and this is the garage, which is there's currently an accessory building roughly in the same spot, but just
Right.
smaller in footprint.
Okay, but the intent isn't maybe obvious. If I read this very closely, they want to, as I understand, demolish the block building and build on the same footprint or close to the same footprint, a new garage. But the square footage of the garage is going to be slightly larger than the block building.
That's accurate.
If I look at the drawing
That's
there.
correct.
Okay.
Go ahead, Brenda.
Again, this may be for the applicant as well too, but does the city have a measurement from the existing garage or edge of the house to the property line?
Give me a second here. Believed it to be in the 10-foot range.
No, what I meant is the existing edge of the existing, not the attached garage.
Of the storage building.
So,
No, there's a garage, or where the driveway goes in.
Right,
That's a garage,
Are
isn't
you
it?
talking about the garage?
Right
in
there.
This location?
Yeah, so from that corner, top left corner there, no,
This. This is the existing.
Exactly, so-
Attached garage.
correct. So from the top, go up left, right there, to the property line.
I'd say it's 20 feet,
That's more than that.
more than.
It's probably in the 30 to 35 foot range.
Okay. All right.
Judy?
but the homeowners want to move the garage over so that it's more consistent with the driveway, is that correct? That's already in there.
I would probably defer that to the
Okay,
applicant, but
okay.
yeah, so currently the situation is that there's an attached garage here to the left and rear of the house, or I guess southwest corner of the house, and then there's an accessory building that's not, it's not a garage. It's I
Right.
think it's probably described as a workshop or a storage building.
But the driveway going in is right on the property line, right?
The driveway going in is on the property
Okay.
line, yeah, it does, it follows almost right along the property
Right.
line, that's correct.
Do we have further questions to the city? Thank you. Is Mr. or Mrs. Furnace here? Please come and state your name and your address, please.
I'm Kimberly von Schweinitz. I did receive in my mailbox today a letter from our neighbor to the left.
Mark that as an exhibit to the, from the planning director.
Yeah, we'll add this as an exhibit. I couldn't remember where my exhibits left off here. I guess it would be E. And, let me make copies of this for the board really quickly here.
And to answer the question,
Ms. Wernick, you received a copy of the staff report. Do you wish to embellish on the report or just respond to and from questions from the board?
oh, I'll do whatever.
Any question from the board to Ms. Furnace? Go, Judy.
I'd like to hear from her, if you don't mind,
Yes.
before we do that.
Ms. Turner, you had asked about the, the garage, the current garage. We actually are going to encompass that if our plans are approved into the house. And because when we turn in and backing out, because of the proximity, it doesn't really work with the turn. So can I walk over there? So this is a single car garage. So we are going to block that off and make that part of the house. And then this way we're able to come in straight to a 2-car, it's actually a 2.5-car garage. This would be from here and it probably ends, and I apologize for the lack of being able to give you exact measurements, but the house is surrounded by a cinder block wall.
Right.
So I've got a cinder block wall and a pretty brick wall on the other side of it between my neighbors. So I really, to really get the measurement from our property line, it's going through the cinder block wall into the other decorative wall that is on the right-hand side, and then on the left-hand side where the garage is, it's just straight cinder block. But it's kind of difficult to measure through the cinder block to get the exact measurement. We are probably close to 9 feet away from the property line on the, we're between 8 and 9 feet on the property line on the left side of the house. But we are right because of the way just drawing straight through with the bedroom coming out, we are hitting, pulling from, through the 2 walls, we are hitting right at 7.5 feet.
In either case, you would require a variance.
Sir?
In any case, you would require a variance
Yes,
because.
sir. Yes, sir. Either way,
Right.
Okay. But the location of the new garage, the new double, you're doing that because of the driveway that's already there?
Yes, ma'am, because the driveway that's there just goes straight back in. I guess technically could, dig it up and move it over. But at that point, to get 2 cars in, it winds up being behind the house. The actual, we are somewhat already,
Thank you.
because this is the current garage, we have already moved the garage behind the house, it's not directly outside. Some of it is already back there, so we have moved it as close we felt like as we could, and then be able to just pull in through the
Okay.
current driveway.
But you're probably going to have to repair some of that driveway anyway, because about half of it looks like it's,
Oh, we are. We actually would, like to, well, we really don't know. We have plans, it's all going to depend on cost, but we'd like to gravel it because the tree next door
right.
seems to be having some problems with. So we'll gravel some of it, keep some of it, just depends, but it is broken.
Okay. And 927 Calhoun Place is to the left of your property?
Yes, ma'am, on the garage side.
Okay.
Question.
But,
You intend for your addition to the house itself, this bedroom addition, to stay within the projected line of the existing house on the far right side? You'd stay, if that line were projected,
Yes, sir.
that east-west line were projected, you would stay within that line,
Yes,
not
sir.
go any further?
No, sir.
The drawing is here, looks like it's, to that line, it looked like it might touch what may have been the old setback, but I'm not sure what this,
I feel like it does. Like I said, pulling through.
right,
But this is the current side of the house, and all we're doing is bringing it straight back,
right.
and then to the left to tie into the current back wall of the house.
But it just looks like that corner may touch what appears to be maybe, and this is a poor copy of what we're looking at here, the previous setback requirement of
Right.
8 feet. Is that how I read that?
The previous setback is 7.5 feet.
And so that was the old requirement. Is that right?
That's my understanding, at the time that this, I know this at the time this plat was created, because I don't think it's necessarily signed by, and it may not have been required to have been signed by a city staff person at that point, but it does show a 7.5 foot building line, which
Okay.
I do believe existed at some point in the past.
Okay.
I don't know exactly when, but I know it hasn't been since the early 2000s.
Okay, well, this drawing in our packets dated July 10, 2000. So it would be after that date.
It would have probably been pretty close to that, but
The zoning
That's
requirement. Okay.
Anything now, the proposed garage
Yes, ma'am.
is going to be on the, if you're facing it, on the left side, it's going to be the same line as the current building,
Yes, ma'am.
and then on the right side, you're going to extend it over.
No, ma'am, I'm sorry. On this side is the current building.
Right,
Okay, and then, so the left side, I may have misunderstood.
okay.
So we are extending the left side.
But the right side is where it's going to be.
Yes, ma'am. Maybe, we've actually moved it over maybe a foot or 2 feet
More to the right?
more to the
Okay,
right. Yes, ma'am.
okay.
To keep it as far off the side as, we tried to keep it as far away from the side
Okay.
as we could. Without moving the garage completely behind the house. So we did shift it a little bit more to the right. It is
Okay.
further than the current storage building.
Okay.
Maybe
you.
about
Oh, okay.
a foot and a half, 2 feet.
Okay.
All right, so my question is, what is the actual dimension of this proposed garage? And how did you arrive at needing, I mean, you're within 2 feet of making this thing work with no variance.
Our architect drew us a garage, and set it on the plat, and I think, it was one of our mistakes in our original drawing. We came out, met with her, and she did it. And then we realized when she put it on the plat that we were within the measurements, so we actually moved it over from what the original drawing was.
I mean, has your architect or drafts person been made aware of you being technically 2 feet from being in variance? Or, excuse me,
Yeah.
within the,
Yes, sir, she,
so has there been any attempt to, you say a 2.5 car garage? I mean, is there,
well, the.
I've got a big
half-
garage, I'm dying to know how large this structure is.
And I apologize, the garage itself is 35
Feet wide, correct?
feet wide.
That's
That's
huge.
about.
Yeah, that's
two-
huge.
Well, on the plat, when we staked it out, it didn't look that big.
Well, I mean, the goal is to get two,
The goal is to get 2 cars.
I absolutely.
Yes, sir. The
Certainly
goal-
think you should be, although you bought a house that had a 1-car garage and seemed to be fine with it, but that's okay. You got, I have no issue with a 2-car garage. I think
Yes, sir.
that's reasonable, and I know you're,
Right.
and I'm just, I guess my real crux of my question is, that I don't know that there's really been any attempt to figure out how to get what you want and still keep it conforming. I don't think has that really been legged out?
I feel like we did, because the original one was closer to the lot. We've moved it over.
Well, you physically have shifted it.
We
I mean, have you
shifted
done
it,
anything with the
yes.
size of the building?
I could take a foot off of it.
I
I'm
guess-
it's not, it would not be life, to be honest with you, it's not going to be life or death for me to take a foot off the garage, to make it conform on the left side. But
35-foot wide structure on a 2-car garage is pretty generous, to say the least, I think.
it's actually a 2.5 to be able to put the
Yeah.
2 garage. We were putting the two cars in and then a place for the lawnmower in my husband's yard.
Yeah, and I'm certainly, on the bedroom expansion, I'm certainly sympathetic to the kick out there. Generally, setbacks are placed, fire reasons, and all that kind of stuff, but there's literally nothing over on the property line to the right, so for you to be hugging that line and get a little better bedroom set up, as long as you're keeping the same geometry, I think as board member Coward brought up, I think I'm okay with that. It's just an arbitrary super garage that's just within a couple feet of being where it needs to be. My real question is, could something really be done to slightly shrink that footprint to where there's only one variance here needed?
I'm sure I could make it, I mean,
Either shrink it slightly
right,
or slide it slightly.
slide it, and like I said, we did slide it, and and to be honest with you, since we were already coming for the variance, we were asking for the variance, and I did not, this is my first time doing this, so I didn't know if I did not understand maybe one side variance would be different than the other side variance, so I knew that this variance was, on the left side, was much easier. Like I said, we may be closer to 9. It may only be a foot.
Okay.
And I can shift it, it can have a smaller lawnmower. I don't,
You can get a few lawnmowers in the garage, it sounds like, as you got, without having.
I think technically, Marion said it was a 2.5 car garage, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
The board here is charged with trying to find hardship for you so that we can find
Yes,
a reason
Yes, sir.
to grant a variance. And the one thing I'm struggling with on the garage side is the hardship is you don't have, the Taj Mahal for a garage on the side. Is there a way to take a foot or so out of this thing and make it work without a variance?
Right.
I think would be at least this board member's preference at this point.
But
And the other thing, excuse me for interrupting, but if it's a 2.5 car garage,
Yes, sir.
I'm using a 12-foot opening for your automobile. 12-foot wide. Times 2 is 24, plus another half of that's up to 30, more or less. And you say it's about 35. So it appears that the hardship is not there, that playing with that dimension,
Yes, sir.
that width, and telling your layout person, okay, I need to be 10 feet from that wall, from that line over there. Now, how you put 10 feet, how you slide 10 feet, I don't want to go any further toward my driveway. I want to stay the same distance from my driveway, but I want 10 feet from there to the corner of the building.
Yes, sir.
Boom, you got it, without a variance, without any other issue.
Yeah, that's
If
what.
that can work for you, it's just a matter of laying it out
Right,
such that, pull a tape, 10 foot's the mark,
right.
and how it looks from
And
that
how it looks
point
back,
over,
and we'll just, yes, sir.
no, and then no problem. I mean, simply stating, and it appears, without walking the property, just from the drawing, just from the photograph, it looks like you've got a little bit of room to play with in your
Yes, sir.
backyard, unless you're getting, and you're not getting on the easement that's crossing the back, the utility easement that's crossing the back of the yard.
Right,
So it appears that maybe with some adjustment, and we're not trying to be hard-nosed,
No, I
but
know. I
trying some
understand, and I
adjustment,
appreciate it.
you can handle the garage without a variance. The other side,
right.
unlike my colleagues here, I don't see a problem with that. We understand that. It's fixed. So for what it's worth, that's my thoughts on it.
do the board have further questions for Ms. Winters? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have others to speak to the variance request? Final call, others to speak to the variance request? Seeing here none, the board entertain a motion so we can enter a period of discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we accept and approve application number 21-93001 with the following sections. One is to approval of a variance to section 4.2.1 of the zoning ordinance. Oh, I didn't have a second, dude. Am I okay to go with that? 4.2.1 of the zoning ordinance to permit an 8-foot side yard setback for a residential addition at 921 Calhoun Place Southeast, TPN 121-1703-003. That the location of the improvement be consistent with the submitted site plan. That the final order shall run with the land, and that the final order shall be recorded in the Aiken County RMC office.
So for clarity, you're admitting condition 2?
That's right.
Yeah, that was going to be my comment, that you're admitting.
Omitting number 2.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may,
I think it should be part of the motion, but go ahead.
I do, and I just want to also point out that it gets a bit of a typo. That'd be a 7.5-foot setback is the request on proposed item 1.
The house addition.
I think in here it says 8 feet. It would actually be 7.5 is what's being requested.
Thank you.
Just for clarity.
Thank you.
So I guess Mr. Chairman, I guess I need to make sure that Board Member Turner is okay with that.
Right, okay.
Okay. 7.5.
So Board Member Turner, you are approving one variance but denying the second.
Right.
Can you make your motion so stated that way?
Oh, okay. Do I need to repeat the whole thing? I'll just say I am removing the number 2 approval of the 8-foot yard setback for a detached garage.
Now, do we have a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Bud seconded. So we have a motion to approve the variance to the house, but denying the variance to the garage. Do we have any discussion? Did you complete your motion about approval and recording with this?
Yeah.
The county? Oh, thank you, okay. Hearing no discussion, those in favor of the motion show by raise of the right hand. The motion is approved unanimously. You have approval for the house, but not for the garage. I call your attention to application 21-93002. The petition is to request a variance to the zoning ordinance section 4.4.11 to permit two-sided freestanding sign in lieu of one double-sided sign on property zone planned commercial at 1026 Pine Log Road. To the city, has this been properly posted?
It has.
Any inquiries that you wish to share with the board other than the ones you've already presented?
Yes, you have one in your packet, and then the same individual followed up with an additional one, which was, should have been at your positions there, at the dais, and essentially just reinforcing, I guess, the statements made in the previous one. I think this is primarily, some issues with the city's landscape ordinance as well as support for the application. We have received no other inquiries other than that.
Thank you. I know when I started reading this, I questioned, why is Brian giving us a job? Once I started reading it, I understand why you passed the buck. Because you could have made a determination based from the planning directors on this, but I understand why you presented it to the board. Thank you. You want to give a presentation?
We do. The subject property is at 1026 Pine Log Road. This is at the northeast corner of Pine Log Road in Silver Bluff. The parcel is about a 7.3 acre parcel that has over 57,000 square feet of inline retail, as we would call it. This does not include the corner parcel, which is a separate parcel down here, which includes the doctor's office and physical therapy center. That is not part of the subject property. The subject property currently has a large legal non-conforming sign, pylon sign, if you will, along Pine Log Road. We have been working with the property owners for probably over a year now in different ways to try to figure out how to make the shopping center, to try to increase the viability of the shopping center economically while still staying within our zoning ordinance and landscape regulations. It is unique in some ways in that it has a retention basin essentially right out in the front of it, and along with that comes a number of landscaping regulations for the city, not only for the landscaping for street trees, but also for the as a screening around the basin itself, and I'll get to that in a second. So the first thing we did is met out on site with the owners. This is from about 4 years ago. This is, we're going down, I guess, from east to west on Pine Log Road here. This is a shared access that goes into an adjacent small shopping center that's shared with this. But you can kind of see at that time there was some very dense vegetation, and each of these trees that are along here meet a street tree requirement for the city and are a grand or significant tree which are protected by the city. And as you'll kind of see coming up, let me go back, essentially right in front of the pylon sign coming from the east, you have a large, particularly large tree in that location that's a grand or significant tree. So the magic of PowerPoint here, you can kind of see between the two, we tried our best to allow them to limb up and thin in consultation with the city horticulturist, the trees on site, to try to improve visibility into the site. The same time, they go back here, there was very dense hedge to the point that it was even intruding on the pedestrian pathways through there. Those hedges still exist. This is a winter shot, so it's not super thick, but they do still exist along here, and there will be, due to the way they had to be trimmed, they will be filling out over time again, but hopefully not to the extent that they were previously. But as you can see, the sign is arguably along Pine Log Road, very visible from one direction, but very hidden from, I guess, the other direction. Staff tried to improve visibility to be able to see into the site, to see maybe the building signage rather than the pylon sign as a trade-off, but the applicant has said that their tenants want to be able to have a sign that can be seen from both directions along Pine Log Road. The property is zone planned commercial. It was developed in the early 90s, along with most of this stretch. Most of this stretch of road was developed in the late 80s, early 90s, not long after Pine Log Road was widened in this area. It used to be a 2-lane stretch, and about the time the bypass came in, I think this was the next, after Hitchcock Parkway kind of came in, this was kind of the next widening that needed to happen due to traffic demands, and commercial followed. The zoning ordinance, because this is planned commercial, it points to the next closest zone district as far as with regard to signage. So we have a allowance for a shopping center sign that can be no greater than 12 feet tall, and a max is out at 120 square feet. but the variance requested here is 4.4.7B, which would allow, that section says that you can have one sign, one ground-mounted freestanding sign on each arterial. There is a sign, but both streets are, so you have to have 5,000 cars a day to be considered an arterial. Silver Bluff Road in this case has 10,600. Pine Log Road has over 21,000 cars a day, so it's a very busy intersection. And so both of those easily meet our requirements. So they did add a sign on the Silver Bluff entrance side within the last 2 to 3 years as well to try to improve signage on the site. But the existing pylon sign satisfies their one allowance per the code on the street frontage of Pine Log Road. So instead of doing that to try to improve visibility, what is being requested is instead of one two-sided sign, which is what you have now and what you would commonly have, what is being requested are two single-sided signs that point essentially east and west respectively, depending on which way traffic is coming, to be located on the islands on either side of the existing stormwater facility. The one here to the west is essentially in position that the existing pylon is in, and then this would be to the island to the east, which you can see here in these photos. It'd be somewhere in this vicinity.
So
With that said,
the existing pylon then would come down.
the existing pylon would come down, and you would have two single-sided monument signs.
Would they be the same height as the one that's there now, or shorter?
They would be shorter there,
Okay.
so the one that's there now, I've not taken a tape measure to it or anything, but we would assume that's probably around 25 feet tall, I think. The sign area, ironically, would be really kind of close, I think, to what our sign area allowance is, but the height is what makes it legal non-conforming.
So the total square footage of the two signs is going to fit within the single sign ordinance or not?
So we would typically allow one sign, and each side could be up to 120 square feet if you maxed out the number of businesses for a shopping center. So in this case, it would be, they have enough tenants in this, it would max out the size. So it'd be up to 12 feet in height and 120 square feet in sign area. We would allow that on both sides. So this would be dividing that out into two separate signs that wouldn't have essentially a backside sign copy to each cabinet.
There is a monument sign, maybe you mentioned this, on Silver Bluff Road. Is that monument sign approximately the same size as what we're considering here?
I believe it to be a little smaller. I think that one came in a bit smaller than the, but it was close. I seem to recall, you know, and because that was done recently, I think there were some constraints with the island that it was put in, but I just don't know right off the top of my head what the square footage of that sign is.
Where exactly are the signs going to be placed? I couldn't find anything, any evidence of where they're going to be placed exactly. That's not exact, that goes out to the sidewalks, apparently.
Not allow it, I mean, the zoning ordinance does not allow it on right-of-way, and that was not a requested variance along this, so it would be on the subject property, so it would be out of right-of-way. It would also have to be out of our site distance triangle, so we have a described triangle in the code that has to be set back. You essentially draw a line along one line of traffic and another line of traffic, and it has to be beyond that diagonal. We would verify that it could fit within all that, but in either case, yes, it would be, it would be within this island on this side and this island on the other side. So it'd likely be set back probably in this range here. You can kind of see, for kind of purposes of just knowing, we think the property line is almost right along the back of the sidewalk here. The Pine Log Road in this area maxes out its right-of-way.
I'm sorry, where is the property line?
We believe it to be nearly along the back of this sidewalk. It's it's really tight through there.
And the placement will be a challenge because of the stop sign and the directional signs on there, where the,
Correct, so those are, interestingly enough, I think those may not be placed on the actual right of way. I think they actually may be placed on the property. Yeah, but it would likely be somewhere back here, closer into this island than it would be out here where the signage are. So DOT would not let us conflict with their signage.
What did you say about DOT?
They would not allow us to conflict with their existing signage.
Right, and this triangle, that's for safety reasons, right?
That's right, that's to ensure, yeah, and that's based on whether you're along an arterial, a collector, or a local street, has different measurements, but it is, so essentially, more traffic, the more it has to be set back to make sure that you can pull out a to be able to see both ways. So that's a requirement based on, again, traffic levels. It applies to any property, but you have to have a window there to be able to see.
We don't have to have public safety approve this.
You don't.
Because of that triangular.
Right, that's correct. We typically enforce, it's in the zoning ordinance, so we as planning enforce that side distance triangle. Now, public safety can come in and, it's one of those things that if you were to feel more comfortable as a board, we can include their review on this.
Mr. Chairman, I had a question for the city.
Good. Karen?
Just to clarify for myself, if the applicant was able to trim the trees so the signage in the building was more visible because of the restrictions of the city ordinance for the trees, ergo, they're looking for new signage, correct?
Right, so we basically, the most simple way to put it is we try to push the tree trimming and tree preservation requirements of our zoning ordinance as far as we could legally within the constraints of that without having to remove a fair number of trees,
Right.
actually. That would be the next step. It kind of came down to their preference to be able to see is to start, I guess, removing grander significant trees or to find better ways to have signage on the subject property.
Understood. So I guess my question, one of the examples that came to mind was the mall property at 2441 Whiskey Road, because there was a significant amount of removal, and my understanding was it was based on the fact that you couldn't see the mall. It was, understandably, you could drive right past it, so there was some fairly significant within the city limits. And I think it shocked a lot of people because we love our trees. So I'm just wondering why, that applied in that case when there really isn't a lot of viable tenancy there. I know that there's been some references to the vacancy rate at this particular location. I understand the standpoint from a navigational point, from an advertising point. Yet conversely, that is a very old sign, and I think just comparing to other communities that have started lowering signage because the trees have grown up, our eye line tends to go a little bit lower. These monuments tend to make some sense, so I'm just wondering why the different approach to two sort of similar, obviously smaller scale in the subject case, but they weren't allowed to go ahead and really get aggressive the way they did at the mall. So that's kind of the first part of my question, and then my second part of the question was because CMI seems to be sharing with that pylon sign, and it's understood through the application that the applicant is going to replace that single-sided poly is going. Is that going to present another signage issue for a separate property? Is it going to have a bit of a domino effect where we're going to have a lot more visual clutter because we can't get rid of the trees? And not that I want to, just for the record.
So I'll speak to the mall situation first. So the mall trees were not removed specifically for the purpose of view. There was also, at the time, we had preliminary plans to start constructing the ring park around there, which included sidewalks and amenities out to the street. So there was a new landscape plan filed for that. Those were also, they weren't quite to the level of being grand or significant trees. They were Some of them are crepe myrtles and things like that that did not classify diameter-wise as those kind of trees. So some of the removal was done along with the new concept plan for them all and the ring park, which council entered into an agreement to provide at that location when the construction is done. So it's not exactly the same in that sense. With regard to the CMI, so they could put up 2 signs at their location right now, whether the board were to deny or approve this variance either way. Now, we would not let them have off-site signage. So right now, they've kind of been allowed to be maintained on that large pylon because it is a shared entrance. But that's essentially that would be a private matter between, I guess, the 2 property owners. And I'm not sure the full story about how and why they are on that pylon sign, but they could direct their own sign right now with the way the zoning ordinance is written.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I want to make an observation that in the last week, since the variance has been applied for, the city has forced the cutting of the shrubbery, trimming of the trees. Many residents didn't know that a retention pond was there. Not only that, but it was hidden, and that corner has always been a safety problem with the retention pond next door. That becomes a blind corner. People have been killed at that intersection trying to make a right-hand turn, and they can't see oncoming traffic. And that is still a concern. The city maintain the shrubbery low, so you can have a line of sight, at least at 3 to 7 feet as required by the ordinance, so that you can see the line of traffic or traffic coming if you want to make a legal right turn. Other questions from the board to the city? Thank you. Do we have a representative? Sign in, please.
My name is Will Pouch, 115 Myers Drive in Greenville.
Mr. Pouch, you received a copy of the staff reports. Do you wish to embellish on that report,
No, I think.
or just respond to questions from the board?
Just respond. I think Ryan did a very thorough job representing the challenges that we have with this property.
Thank you. Question from the board to Mr. Pouch.
Got a question?
Karen?
I'm just curious, the drawing, the speculative drawing as far as the proposed monument, I'm assuming the big lots is just a example of a big box?
It's big lots because we're courting big lots hard and strong. But, one of their key objections to the site, just like Bilo's objection and decision to not renew the lease, was the lack of visibility. They felt like traffic had a hard time seeing their store, especially with the increased competition from Kroger and Walmart around the street. I'm not saying that Bilo would have survived regardless, but that's been a constant bone of contention for them.
So you think that, Bilo's change was not related to the non-performing store? Are they kind of saying that the reason it was one of the non-performing that was let go was because of the actual visibility issue?
They've complained about it for years. I actually came on board 3 years ago. I believe it's the exact same time Ryan came on board with the city. And the property was held in a family trust. Elderly gentleman kind of ran the property, all the properties. And this was one that just kind of got out of hand. So one of the first things I did when I came on board was to come down and meet with Ryan, to meet with the city arborist and their landscape people, to come up with a plan to remove all the clutter that you saw from the first picture 4 years ago. And just to clarify one thing that Ryan said, Ryan, if you go back to that the 4-year-old picture. So all this here, we hired a landscape architect to come in, because we had growth like this, even in the islands inside the shopping center, and it was a safety hazard, because you couldn't see people, or smaller people, or people riding in their little scooters and stuff. So we took all that out, we limbed everything up, we actually took everything out around this detention area and replaced it with a shrub type that would only grow as high as the railing around the retention. And then we limbed up all the trees as much as we could, cut out the dead wood. And since then, I can't remember the name of the tree guys that we used, but we implemented an annual maintenance to where they go around the entire property to cut out any dead wood and continue to just limb it up, just like you would to cut the grass and water the plants.
Thank you.
I hate these things.
Brandon?
So have you arrived at your sign dimensions for these proposed monument signs just strictly by just taking the available square footage off what was allowed on the frontage and dividing it by 2? Is that what you did?
I didn't do it, but Paramount Signs installs signs like this for, commercial properties all over the southeast. And, their job is to go in and look at the dimensions and figure out what will fit inside the ordinance.
I guess my concern is, especially on the one corner, if you go back to that picture that we were at, yeah, right there. Yeah. Something that's 12 feet in scale tall and 10 feet long. I'm trying to figure out where that's going.
Right here. So this tree would be relocated, and it basically goes right here.
And would not interfere with the visibility of the stop sign or the other sign?
Correct.
Okay.
I'm not looking at text, I just took a better picture on my phone, that's why I keep referring to my phone here.
Yeah, admittedly, I went out at on a bad day to try to get pictures, so this is just for the record, I'm referencing a Google Street View here, which luckily has a history of photos that you can go back and look at.
This is actually, right, I think I measured it before, but it's almost 25 feet from there to this curve. And about the same on the other side.
So it would have to go, that tree's got to go somewhere then.
That crepe myrtle?
Yeah.
Correct.
But that's the one that'll be, you said, excuse me, sir, that's the one you said you're gonna relocate?
Yeah, we have to relocate, like if we move something that's not a substantial or grand tree, we're required to maintain whatever the caliper density is for the entire property. So if you take a 4-inch tree out here, you got to put a 4-inch tree somewhere else.
Okay.
Or make a donation to your tree fund.
On the other end, where the other sign is going, where you plan to put the other sign? Okay, with regard to that, it will be back, it'll be in essentially the place where the pylon sign is that
Correct.
correct? So that should provide plenty of sight distance for anyone coming to that intersection.
Correct.
Okay.
And it's my understanding, Ryan, you can correct me on this, but it's my understanding that in theory, we could go all the way up to the sidewalk. As long as we don't meet as long as we maintain our angles and sight lines and all that kind of stuff. I'm not saying we want to do that, but technically, you can go straight to the property line with signage, correct?
Well, with our site distance triangle, I don't think you could go all the way up, but I think there may be some room for it to go kind of, I guess, back a little bit closer to the pond and further forward.
Right.
I guess is the way I would say it. So that there is a little bit of room there that it could potentially still comply with our zoning ordinance and slide forward maybe a few feet, not,
But the intent, right now, your intent is, without actually staking the location, your intent is to stay roughly within the footprint of the pylon sign,
Correct.
if I understand you right.
You can, it's hard to see here, but you can see the fencing and
Yes.
the shrub right there.
Yes,
But probably gonna slide it that way and then at an angle. What we're concerned about is our neighbor's trees.
Yeah.
So long-term, we don't wanna have to move these things again. It cost me $40,000 to put them in. And we wanna make sure that these trees, because we don't have any control over the maintenance of these trees, just like if you flip back to the other side,
you don't.
well,
I think
we
I
gotta go
have
far
it
back
there.
But
yeah, some of these maybe.
this, the parcel to the right of us,
Yeah, I did go back and park. Head.
it's like we don't have any control over
That's right.
this tree.
That's right.
It's on his property. Now, both of these are ours, but this one's not.
Was the corner business, which was once a Blockbuster Video on the corner, was that originally part of this parcel?
I don't know, to be honest with you.
Okay, so it
It's
wasn't
not since-
sold
Not
off,
since we've owned it.
pardon me?
When our company bought it in 2000, it was not part of the shopping center.
Okay,
But we own the driveways, and they basically have an easement to use our driveway, just like the place on the right has an easement to use that driveway.
The other obstacle, other than the trees on that property to the right, is when I was there a couple days ago, you had a bunch of construction workers who were at the Chinese restaurant. And they all had, there's about 250 or 350 trucks parked. See where that one car is by the tree? You had 3 in a row going towards the restaurant there. I don't care what kind of sign you had there. You could not see. I walked the sidewalk. You were not going to be able to see through those trees.
Right.
Or, excuse me, through cars and those trees. I don't care what you put on that corner until you're already there or past it.
Well, you can't see the other one at all.
No, you can't. And, that's only going to be once or twice a day if you got that type of vehicle and that type of traffic. That's got that parking lot loaded. That just was a unique scenario where you had a bunch of 3 or 4 Super Duty trucks there parked right by the tree and going over. That whole corner was blocked visibility wise as you walk down the sidewalk.
And I don't know if you were out there when they were repaving, but we just repaved this entire driveway and in the back. And, we had a discussion with this guy that we wouldn't make him contribute to the repavement if he'd pay a little bit more attention to trimming his trees and his shrubs out front. He said, sure.
Sounds like a deal.
Now, to capture the west to east traffic on Pine Log, you got, on that corner, that's almost 6 lanes of traffic, counting the turn lanes. That you're gonna have difficulty, that one sign there to capture that traffic.
I'm not sure I understand.
Well, the eastmost sign there is going to have difficulty attracting traffic going west to east.
That's correct, but, what we're hoping is the traffic going this way sees this one centered up to think about, because you can't turn here, but to see this one centered up to jar their minds into saying, I need it.
And turn at the next one?
Turn it on there.
Okay.
I actually went in there today to see if they had any fresh turkeys, and they don't.
Well, needless to say, Mr. Chairman, I was very disappointed to see my nice buy low store to move or to go away. But I've been in that lot many times in both directions for the last 20-odd years. And again, you got to kind of plan a little bit, but you can get in and you
Yeah.
can get out. But I kind of applaud you to get, to try to get rid of that large pylon sign.
Yeah.
Because we've had this committee look at signs before and rule out those large ones and have them pull the sign down to within the required
Right.
zoning for signage in the city.
And I didn't quite understand the letter that was attached here from a Mr.
Denton,
Mr. Denton. I wasn't quite sure what he was getting at, so I emailed him, and he said, well, those trees are a hazard, and why don't you just cut them all down? I said, you try cutting all those trees down in the city, Vegas. Good luck with that.
yeah. They look good now. Do we have other questions from the board?
I had a question for the city, so I don't know whether we can go back and forth or not.
Yes, you can. Go ahead. Anyway,
Okay, so the property is planned commercial, is that the zoning?
That's correct.
And looking at the conditions for the motion, the sign ordinances are to be consistent with general business. Are there differences between those two, sign ordinance-wise?
There are not. So in the general business district, we have 3 different categories of sign. There's general business single user, general business shopping center, and general business office. So we evaluated the sign as presented under the general business shopping center sign as the closest relevant zone district described in the sign code for freestanding signs.
And so, as it stands, based on it passing the arterial definition of having 2 significant arteries going, you could put the one freestanding, double-sided freestanding on each side, and the square footage again was for what for each sign?
120 per side, 120 square feet per side.
With a maximum height of 12 feet?
With a maximum height of 12 feet.
Again, the one thing I wrestle with is, those are huge pylon signs to be on the corner there. I'm wrestling in my head, when you have one sign that's got to be viewed both ways, you have the full square footage, you're seeing it from further away, versus something that you're just trying to catch a one-directional, closer traffic look. The footprint of that screen from the floor up is probably pretty close to 12 feet, and that's probably pretty close to 10 or 11 feet wide, just for perspective for the board members. So if you took that thing from the floor to the ceiling and probably a foot wider than that screen, again, I just don't know where that's going, especially on the one side. I really don't. And that's going to be like a wall as you're pulling into that thing. And again, this is, lots of commercial setup, sometimes you have, when you're looking for one directional for traffic to pull in, you're generally have something closer to the street yet smaller. So I'm just from effectiveness, I'm just trying to figure out, A, will a sign that big really comfortably fit on that corner, at least on the one corner? And B, is something smaller yet closer out towards the street going to be more effective anyway? I guess that's a question to no one in particular, just an observation. To the applicant, what's your thought on that?
We've talked to 3 different sign companies that service this market, and the challenge, unlike, I get what you're saying as far as like the Kroger or Home Depot sign, it didn't take full advantage of the 12 feet, but they don't have 8 shop tenants like I do that want to be on that sign, whether they're visible or not.
Yeah, no, I'm completely sympathetic with giving you the 2 freestanding signs. I really don't have a problem with that. There is a hardship with the trees and you being subject to how the trees have to be kept. One sign's just not going to do it. I'm just trying to I just don't know if it's just as easy as going, okay, well, you can have, one sign could be 12 feet tall, two-sided, so we'll give them two at that, and you can put them each on a corner. I just don't know if it's quite that simple, I guess, is kind of what I'm wrestling with.
You know, aesthetically, we got out there with foam board and assembled, you know, used different configurations and walked all up and down the street and drove up. Somebody must have thought we were selling Christmas trees or something. So we would set them all up and then get in the car and drive from both directions, the different lanes to see the sight lines. And, you know, we just basically went by what the code was for the requirements for that sign.
Well, I actually like the look of the signs,
Thank you.
much better than the prior one.
Yeah. Any further questions to Mr. Pouch from the board? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have others to speak to the variance request? Final call, others to speak to the variance request? Seeing, hearing none, the chair will entertain a motion so we can enter a period of discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance application to permit the two single-sided freestanding monument signs along the Pine Log Road frontage on property zone Planned Commercial located at 1026 Pine Log Road, TPN 106-12-13-002, and that the location of the signs be consistent with the submitted site plan, subject to site distance requirements for corner visibility established in the Zoning Ordinance Section 4.1.5, and that the size of the signs be consistent with the allowance for general business shopping center signage in Section 4.4.11.c.4 of the zoning ordinance, and that the final order shall run with the land, and that the final order shall be recorded at the Aiken County RMC office.
It's been properly moved in second, Karen and Judy. Do we have any discussion?
Again, to the city, so are we approving this specific sign, or a sign like this, or I mean, what's the,
So you
or are we
would,
just approving dimensions?
so yeah, essentially you're approving square footage and dimensions, which, so I would say it would resemble at a maximum the sign presented. They could go smaller if they wanted to below that. How they divvy up the copy within that would be up to the applicant, but essentially the size and scale would be similar to what is presented in the package.
Okay, but how about style? Are we approving a monument sign?
The
or
monument sign, isn't it?
It's a, yeah, so the condition is for a monument
Okay,
sign.
I'm sorry, I see that, yeah.
John?
For the city. The site distance requirement, again, that's what you were talking about for visibility. Will govern the placement so that the public safety is guaranteed?
That's correct.
Do we have any more discussion on readiness? Seeing here none, those in favor of the said motion, show by raising the right hand. The motion is carried unanimously. That being the final item on the agenda, the board will now entertain a motion for adjournment.
So move.
We stand adjourned.